What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're going to jump in and speak about the top weapons to pick up in the game right now over the summer, in preparation for Beyond Light in September. Of course, that'll be Destiny 2's next big expansion, and alongside that, Bungie are making a change to how legendary weapons and armor works, and it means that gear will have an infusion cap, where eventually it's no longer able to be leveled up. And so many of our favorite weapons will become immediately power redundant in September. So things like Recluse or Mountaintop, for example. And over time, this will happen to more and more of our existing gear. But the one big positive that we have this season is that Bungie have introduced a fairly big loot table of top tier legendaries, and by farming them now, we'll get access to some really good weapons which won't become redundant in September. And in most cases, they'll be uncapped for the majority of Year 4. So it's a good opportunity to get hold of some awesome gear that'll still be awesome in Beyond Light and Year 4, because we don't want to get left wondering what to use in new endgame activities, but also, in this video, if anything isn't clear about sunsetting already, hopefully we'll make sense of that as well. If you guys do enjoy the video and find it useful, a rating really does help me out, but of course in the game right now, sunset timers are displayed when you inspect a piece of gear, and so we'll show the maximum power cap for that piece of gear and when it's going to be reached. And of course, once a piece of gear gets to that cap, it means that the maximum power level can no longer be increased, and that will render a lot of gear redundant in new max power activities. Of course, you can still use weapons in normal Crucible where power doesn't influence anything, but otherwise for the rest of the serious content in the game, we're going to need to acquire new gear. And so you can keep your eye on when certain items will sunset in game, but now is the time to get ready and ensure you have as many solid weapons and armor pieces as possible, and especially those that will remain relevant for not only September, but also the majority of Year 4. And so the Prismatic Recaster is going to be very key to this in Season 11, and it's certainly the tool which will best prepare us in acquiring future-proof legendary gear right now, that of course also keeps our options open later. So instead of heavily reviewing armor and weapons in this video, let's be a little bit more informative about how the loot table itself actually works, and get a picture of which gear will offer us the most value now and up until the spring of 2021, to kind of build a list of the stuff that is most worth investing into for the future of the game. Weapons like Recluse and Mountaintop, for example, will be going away, and alongside a lot of other weapons, our next best options are going to lie with the upper tier god rolls that we can get this season, and specific loot pools and drops from recent seasons. A big plus for Last Wish and Garden of Salvation raid gear is that the weapons and armor won't be sunset until after Season 14, which will be at the tail end of Year 4. And so looking especially at weapons like Shattering Bone or the Sacred Providence. Both of these raid pulse rifles can do work in PvE, and importantly, we're also going to need to think about PvP viable weapons for things like Trials next season. We'll touch on that more, but of course there are a series of standout weapons from both of those raids. And also on the front of hand cannons you have things like Nation of Beasts and the Sacred Gospel. And so bear in mind, loot from the expansion raids is going to remain viable for some time. The interesting thing about armor is that it applies there as well, and so if you have max stat sets of gear from either of those two raids, or if you can take advantage of the very farmable Moonfang and Coda 9 gear in the Prophecy Dungeon right now, all of these sets are going to remain viable until the end of Year 4. And of course, there's no guarantee that Bungie will give us such farmable armor in Season 12. So bear in mind, going for such high stat rolls might not be so easy once they take the Season 11 content out of the game. Even if these aren't your favorite sets of gear, Bungie are working on a transmog feature aimed to be delivered before the end of Year 4. And if that happens, there's a pretty good chance that any awesome armor sets you get now will at least have power and seasonal mod relevance until next year, but then have the potential to still be relevant in some form with the introduction of transmogrification. So once it comes to Year 4, it'll give us at least 2 new seasons worth of gear to collect before we lose any nice builds or things like that. And so the same will apply for farming Umbral Engrams for specific stat rolls on the Recaster for the Season Pass armor. It definitely is something worth taking advantage of now, as opposed to losing all of your best kind of stat rolled gear and stuff when September rolls around. Onto weapons, it goes without saying just how good some of the new Season 11 drops are. And so of course we've got the new legendary swords, the Fallen Guillotine and Temptation's Hook, and they're able to put out some serious damage, particularly the Fallen Guillotine. But importantly again, these are weapons that we'll be able to run around with on Europa, or to take into the raid on the Deepstone Crypt. So definitely go after god rolls of these right now if you can, and there are some of the other season weapons that are worth a look as well. Fans of the Cold Denial and high impact pulse rifles in general might want to look out for a good PvP roll of that, especially as it could be very viable for upcoming trials in Season 12. And power enabled PvP starting in September is totally something to think about. We're going to need PvP capable weapons at what will be current levels for trials in Year 4, and obviously the meta is going to shift, but getting hold of good future-proof PvP weapons now is also a solid shout, and the ability to focus Umbral engrams is going to make going for these weapons insanely easy, at least compared to how we've had it in the past. So definitely make sure that you're familiar with the various different types of engrams that are available on the Recaster, and that you make as many of those upgrades in general as you can, because essentially 90% of the legendary gear that isn't going to become redundant in September is stuff that's dropping from that Recaster right now. With weapons like Recluse being sunset, if you're looking for a good replacement of swords, something that can feel kinda similar, and be sure not to sleep on the reprised Death Adder. Another Viced SMG that can drop in the dungeon, and so it has the same base model as Recluse, and the same archetype, and it can get polygonal rifling. Unfortunately can't get ricochet rounds, but has accurized rounds, as well as steady rounds or extended mag, and then can roll out bonuses like Feeding Frenzy, and otherwise doesn't get the damage bonuses you'd see on Recluse, but can get Dragonfly, Rangefinder, Moving Target, and more, so there are a few options there. And as well, we also have the Ikelos SMG this season, and it looks like it's going to become available via an upcoming Exodus-focused Umbral engram, probably a little bit later on this season, but this can also get accurized rounds, as well as the Seraph rounds perk, and then Subsistence, Grave Robber, and Dynamic Sway Reduction, as well as Surrounded, Demolitionist, and Tap the Trigger. And so while it won't replace Recluse by any means, I think it's certainly something to take a look at regardless. Truthteller has become a very appealing option as a bit of a replacement for the Mountaintop, so of course that's another weapon that's going to be sunset, but Truthteller is dropping this season and isn't going to be sunset until the end of Year 4. Unfortunately though, it's one of the only weapons we're going to mention that doesn't come from the Prismatic Recaster reliably, because it's actually in the world loot table, so you can get it by turning in weapon engrams, or buying engrams from the Cryptarch or Banshee, as well as Crucible and Vanguard packages, but of course it does make the God roll pretty rare. But if you could potentially get a roll with something like Spike Grenades, and then Feeding Frenzy, and Multi-Kill Clip, and with Multi-Kill Clip procced, my friend Jarv made a video, but it's actually possible to do more damage than the Mountaintop. And so farming the world pool for that one right now is definitely something to look out for. We should mention here, if you guys are looking at any of the weapons from Season of Undying or Season of Dawn, bear in mind that Undying stuff will sunset in September, and then the Season of Dawn stuff will sunset in December. And so Season of Dawn weapons won't be immediately irrelevant, but they're not going to be far behind, and anything from Season of Undying will be power capped immediately in September. Importantly, a few Season of the Drifter weapons have been brought forward, and they're available via the Dredgen engram on the Recaster. So they include Nightwatch, Lonesome, and Bad Omens, but also Gnawing Hunger, which is definitely one of the best weapons at the moment. But new versions of these weapons are actually dropping this season, and when they do, they'll have the Arrivals icon, and these ones won't be sunset until the end of Year 4. Just bear in mind that you do have to get updated drops of any of these weapons this season, as opposed to holding on to older ones. And Gnawing Hunger in particular is a very good weapon. The archetype is super strong at the moment, but you can roll accurized rounds, Zen Moment, Tap the Trigger, Subsistence, Rampage, Kill Clip, Multi-Kill Clip, Demolitionist. The potential perk rolls on this one are absolutely ridiculous, so definitely pay attention to the Dredgen engram. And of course you can get Nightwatch as well as Lonesome, two other Reckoning weapons that are pretty good, so certainly don't forget about those. Another auto rifle though will be the Forward Path from Iron Banner this season. It's another 600 rate of fire auto, and it can roll accurized rounds, Feeding Frenzy, 4th times the charm, and then we've got Swashbuckler and Multi-Kill Clip, so another very good potential auto rifle there. However, we should speak about shotguns, as these are going to be something to pay attention to, and many of them will sunset at the same time, which is pretty unfortunate. But the updated Ikelos shotgun is going to be an absolute no-brainer, so it's acquired through the dungeon or special engrams this season, and it can roll accurized rounds, Feeding Frenzy, and then you can get Trench Barrel or Surrounded. And of course the Trench Barrel perk in this archetype is proven to be incredibly strong, but Surrounded paired with a Surrounded spec mod can also output some pretty monstrous damage, so picking up that Ikelos shotgun right now is an opportunity to get an immediate future-proof shotgun that's going to be very, very good. To talk Iron Banner this season, on top of the Forward Path, Iron Banner's going to offer an updated Swarm of the Raven, which is a very solid heavy launcher, but additionally will drop Bite of the Fox and or Wings Maul, all of which new versions can be acquired, which don't sunset until the end of Year 4, so in addition to Recaster stuff, Iron Banner weapons from this season are totally going to be worth farming. And you can kind of see that by collecting stuff like this season, we will be able to start and build a repertoire of pretty decent weapons to begin with. We are going to replace these with new weapons in Beyond Light, of course, but it's also nice right now to be able to make an investment into the game that doesn't feel like a really short-term one, right? And something that'll go away in 2.5 months. The front of legendary hand cannons is a pretty strange one. Dire Promise and the Old Fashioned will cap out in Season 14 and 13 respectively, so existing rolls that you have on them are going to remain useful, but otherwise Criminal's Dagger in the Iron Banner is a 110, but has been updated for the season. Not sure how much interest there'll be there. But also don't forget the Ikelos hand cannon dropping from the dungeon this season. There are a few shouts, including those 2 raid hand cannons, Nation of Beasts and the Ancient Gospel once again. When it comes to Trials weapons, the ones we have right now are set to cap out in Season 14, so they're not going away immediately. Bungie have said though that they plan to update the Trials loot pool for Season 13, so hopefully the new rewards in the winter are going to be pretty neat, and of course they'll arrive with enough time to let us get both of the Trials loot tables before one of them becomes redundant. The final thing I'm going to mention right here is a really useful list from Spawnling on Reddit of all of the weapons this season and from recent previous seasons that are still going to be relevant in terms of power caps immediately when September rolls around. So if you want a list of all of the weapons that will still be useful, that definitely serves as a really good reference point. So I'll link that one down below, because it includes literally everything that you can keep hold of, at least in the legendary pool for weapons. And otherwise, I hope that's kind of explained a little bit better how you can focus your time this season into gear that's still going to be really useful in September and beyond, but also a bit more information on sunsetting in general. And so let us know if the video has been useful down in the comment section, but also if you have any questions about particular pieces of gear or how sunsetting is working, definitely drop those in the comments as well, and we can all try to help each other out. But if you've enjoyed the video, guys, feel free to get subscribed to the channel so that I can keep you up to date with all the Destiny 2 news, coverage for the new content in Beyond Light, and all that good stuff. And also if you've enjoyed the video, a rating does help me out down below as well. But otherwise, guys, for now, thank you very much for tuning in, and whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.